working in an environment where capital was never an issue because the corporate will take care of the capital, and I was always focused on the business side. And then when you start the journey as an entrepreneur, so I remember the first day when Barry and we took an office and we had to shut the office. It had a shutter. We didn't know how to close the shutter. It took us almost 40 minutes to figure out how to close the shutter. So
Hey Nitin, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Really looking forward to our chat.
thank you so much for inviting me here.
So Nitin, let's start with our rapid fire questions. If you could be a professional in any other field unrelated to what you are doing, what would you do?
Well, actually, I would be in a band. That's
You
what I
would be in
would
a
do.
band. Okay.
Yeah.
If you could have dinner with any three historical figures, who would they be and why?
Well, actually, if it's okay, I can, name one president whom I want to have, and
Yeah.
which definitely. I think Mahatma Gandhi will be, one of them, and second will be Churchill, and the
Okay.
third is, a gentleman called Scott Galloway. In fact, Scott, I did ping him, during my last visit, but it's too expensive apparently to have dinner with him.
Okay. Maybe you need to write a lot of tweets which anger people. That's how you reach him. Yeah, smart
Maybe
guy.
that's
I
what I
like him
will.
as well.
Yeah.
Good combination. One question you would ask yourself if you were the host of this podcast.
How did I get here? So I think that's the question.
Okay.
So if you would have asked me, 10 years back, saying, we would ever think about, being an entrepreneur, I don't think so. I would have said yes.
Okay, we will ask you that question. This is how we make the podcast easier for us, where we ask the guests, what do you want us to ask you?
That's smart. That's very smart.
Bootstrap versus funded.
I think it all depends on stages, right? I think early stage, definitely bootstrapped. And when you grow, or rather when you started to grow, the validation of the model has happened. I think that capital definitely helps. So I would say it's depending on the stage.
If you could invest in any three startups today, which would they be?
Any three. So one is Spotify, second is Airbnb, and the third would be Swiggy.
Interesting. Any reason why you picked Swiggy?
Yeah, I think they have really scaled well, and also I'm just thinking the way they have been expanding into adjacent businesses. So I think they're making really smart moves. And I'm ignoring what's going on in the stock market.
Sure.
So if you ignore all of that, what let's say Deliveroo is going through outside India, and what Zomato is going through, or it's slightly better now. But I think fundamentally they are solving real problems, and I think they are good businesses. I mean, I would love to be an investor there.
And the last one for the rapid fire, generalist versus specialist.
I think journalists, right? So again, I would say journalists would be at the senior management level. But if I go at the middle management, I would definitely go for specialist.
Depends on the position. It makes
Yeah.
sense.
Understand. Okay, so the Thiel question: what is one truth few people agree with you on, and something that you really believe in?
I think the creative can also be solved, through technology. And I think post Chat GPT, people have, in a way, kind of changing their views as well. Of course, there's still a long way to go, and I think even at our end, that's what we're also trying to do. How technology can solve the creative side as well.
Understand. Okay, and now we'll ask you the question you wanted us to ask you, which is, how did you get here?
It's been a strange journey. I have always been, on the corporate side. I became one of the earliest vice presidents in Arvind. And then my boss was moving on to a future group. He asked me to join him to set up, a brands company in Future Group. Future Group is essentially a retailer. So I always love challenges. So I said, okay, let's go. And four of us were supposed to join Future Group. But over the weekend, Reliance met my boss, and by the next week we had joined Reliance. So that's how things changed. But then what I realized there was that even though we had lots of brands in our portfolio, but I felt that India, the way we had logistics challenges at that point of time, infrastructure challenges, real estate challenges. So it was becoming difficult to scale, the brands. and I felt there has to be a better way to do it. And that's when Myntra approached us because an ex-colleague of mine from Arvind, he joined Myntra as the COO, and he came over to ask for one of our brands at that point of time, and that brand's average selling price was about 6,800 rupees. So I asked him that, okay, what's your average selling price on the platform? So he told me it's about close to 600 rupees. So I said,
Hmm.
how is it gonna fly? So he said, no, it's going to work because, in the early days when we started doing department stores, we had a similar story. But to be honest, the time was end of financial year. I had targets to achieve and I had some dead inventory. They were willing to pay cash. So I gave it to them.
Hmm.
And to our surprise, right? So we got orders from places like Jamshedpur. We got orders from places like Guwahati. So that was truly, moment of truth for me that, there is something here and this is where I would love to go deeper. And that's when I started, learning more about it. And one thing I was clear on that I felt that whole fashion vertical e-commerce space had been already solved. And then Flipkart was doing a great job on the horizontal side. I wanted to be on the enablement side
Right.
because coming from the brand side, I realized that the brands have challenges at their end, and they would always need technology to enable them. And then that's with that belief is actually when I jumped in. So that's a quick background about AceTurtle, and I'm sure we'll talk about the pivot later on.
Understand. And were there any early thoughts when you were trying to start your journey as a founder, and you said that you were very surprised that you are in this position? Why do you feel so?
Yeah, because I've always been working in environment where the capital was never an issue,
Hmm.
because the corporate will take care of the capital, and I was always focused on the business side. And then when you start the journey as an entrepreneur, so and there are so many nuances, because literally, if I remember the first day when Barry and I, we took an office and we had to shut the office, it had a shutter. We didn't know how to close the shutter. It took us, almost 40 minutes to figure out, how to close the shutter. So, so it's a different ball game, right? So, and then I think the perseverance, which this teaches you the whole entrepreneurship, and I think I also feel it also makes you a better person. Uh, but I think I'm surprised that I went through with it, and because my ex boss predicted I'll be back in a year's time.
Okay.
So my
How
to be
many
honest,
years has it been since that prediction?
well, see, I resigned in 2013. We started 2014. So here we are in 2023,
10
right?
years.
So yeah. So this is yeah, it's been an amazing ride, and I feel that maybe 5 years back I would have started, would have been even better.
Hmm.
But there is nothing better than betting on yourself.
Understand. And were you scared, frightened, anxious? Because the corporate world, like you said, capital was never an issue. Very simple things were taken care of, simple in quotes, like closing and opening a shutter. What was your feeling before you took the plunge?
To be honest, I was not nervous or scared, because from the beginning I've always been, kind of confident of what I can do, and in most cases, we got fairly success on the corporate side. So I was not nervous, and at the same time, I didn't anticipate what was, what lies ahead. So maybe you can say a lack of ability to comprehend what was ahead of me. But one thing which I was definitely, apprehensive about, and which I made a conscious effort to go deeper into, was because I didn't come from technology world, because I came from the retail world, and here we were trying to do a business where the core was technology. So, and I think that was something which I was apprehensive about, for sure.
Walk us through that journey. What were the next steps? How did you?
So the first thing which we did is, because we were senior guys in the corporate world,
Yeah.
angel money was relatively easy to come by, because people bet on you. They didn't understand what you were trying to do, but largely they were okay to bet on us, right?
Yeah.
So which was good. Then what we did was we said, okay, let's try and hire people from IBM and other such companies, because we need to build something which does not exist today. Because and then we realized that we made some wrong hires, because people in larger companies are focused on small parts, and here you're trying to build something ground up. So we Then we did some corrections, and then we got on board people who love building products, and there I think the startup ecosystem really helped a lot. And I think that's another good thing about the entrepreneurship. Whereas in the corporate world, there is a lot of the peers compete, but here we have seen that we of course compete, but at the same time we are extremely collaborative. So I don't recall even a single person whom I have asked for help, right, in the ecosystem of this whole startup world, and who said no, right, ever. So, and I think, and I try my best to give that back as well. And I think that was a huge help because a lot of people helped us to get in the right circles, meet the right folks, and of course then how to convince them to come on board. But that's another challenge, right? So because we were bootstrapped in the beginning, more or less angel funding, and so there was again money had started to flow in at that point of time, and the smart guys had options of joining some of those companies or us. So but fortunately we were able to get a good team, I would say, in phase 2 of AceTurtle, and then we were able to build what we were trying to build.
And what about the sales side, getting your first few customers? How did that process go, and what was that journey like?
See, I think the sales cycle for the first few customers was not difficult because the other CEOs in the retail world were my peers, where I had interacted with them in the past, so I had access to the CEO. So to sell them the vision and what we are trying to do, they understood the problem because we understood the problem, because that's what we started to address the problem. So they got it. So I think so getting the initial set of clients was not too much of a challenge, I would say.
What was the initial problem that you were tackling? What was that? The
See,
one
we
that you...
were trying to connect the online offline world. That's what we were trying to do, omni-channel commerce. So that's what we were, attempting to do. Because that's the problem I was seeing, to solve the scalability problems of retail in India. Because it solves the infrastructure problem, it solves touch and feel, which online doesn't serve. At the same time, it was quite clear as well in the early days itself for us, and fortunately we turned out to be right, that consumers want to connect with brands. They will be channel agnostic. Channel will only be a means of reaching them. So from the beginning itself, we started to build the platform in a way that it was channel agnostic. So that's how we started off.
Did you do some sort of TAM analysis or anything like that before starting out, or was it just instinct, gut,
We
and your
did,
experience?
and we completely were off.
Okay.
So we don't do that anymore. So, but we were completely off, because I think what we underestimated was the adoption problem, right? So because all of these large brands have been built over decades, right? And they set up their own processes, and these legacy processes, etc., were relevant at that point of time. And of course, in today's environment, it was becoming difficult for them to keep pace with it. And maybe that's the reason why disruption always in any industry, forget about retail, always happens from outside, because the players in the industry are not able to keep up because of these limitations they have, because the processes, the DNA of the organization is very, very difficult to change. So I think that was the problem we definitely underestimated on the adoption problem. And the customer success teams had to operate, especially in our kind of a scenario where you had to have the buy-in of CEO, because typically how the brands are, they're very channel specific in India, right? Actually, not India, it's globally the same thing. So where you will have, a wholesale channel, you will have, a channel for retail, you will have a channel for department stores, which is some, well, let's call it modern trade or modern retail or whatever they want to call it. And then there was e-commerce coming in, and then there was an e-commerce channel as well. And they had these channel heads, they had channel specific teams, channel specific assets, for this. And here we were talking about to make the business channel agnostic. So really talking about shaking things up. And unless the CEO buys in, right, you do not even have a starting point, right?
Right.
So I think these are some of the key learnings, which we had.
And so walk us through, the next steps. You had a team in place now. You had some funding. You were able to connect to
Yeah,
some
so we had
CEOs.
some angel money, and then what happened was that we started off by looking at the model to say, okay, we will do it for controlled environments first, because they are easier to control, right? The end of the brand has more control there. So which was essentially, everybody had their own, large brand will always have their own, exclusive stores in India because there
Okay.
is not enough distribution on the wholesale side to expand. So that's where for every large brand you see in India, they've always done on the back of their own exclusive stores. So we knew
Hmm.
they'll always have stores, the kind of clients we were targeting. But and a lot of them did not. In fact, most of them did not have the web stores, right? Their online environments as well. So what we first started doing was to say, okay, and our for our platform to work, you need both. You need both the environment. So even to the extent if we had to build websites for some of our clients, we even did that, right? Though that was not our model. So we did that, build that so that we could connect their retail stores to their web stores. But we then in the beginning we faced a few challenges in scaling up because what was happening is around the same time there was a lot of capital being infused into the e-commerce sector, and these
Yeah.
large platforms like Amazon, Flipkart, Mintra, and that time there used to be Jabong and all that as well. So those guys
Right.
were throwing money to acquire the customer. They were also willing to go to any lengths to get more inventory from the brands. So they
Hmm.
would pay and get inventory even at a very very attractive margins for the brand. So the brands would end up doing that because everybody has sales pressure, and
Yeah.
our ball game was slightly more, I would say, from a long term perspective. But we would the challenge we would have is the same SQ, which would be let's say on the web store and in the physical store. The large platforms would be discounting them, and of course
Uh,
we couldn't match the logistics power of what these guys had, right? So because our brands had very few orders, as a result. So we said, okay, then if we have to start scaling, then we have to get going also with the marketplaces for the online environment because that's where the volumes are today. So then we started working with our clients to say, okay, let's get your marketplace business also here. We give them the logic that you'll not have any captive inventory. Today you're keeping captive inventory. This will become all fungible inventory. It's better sell through, better stock turns, hence better margins for you, and so on and so forth. So
so
couple of
just to be
yeah.
clear, you would help them list on platforms like Amazon
So
and
yeah, so we'll use a platform. So what the platform would do is that we would connect all the inventory points, to the platform. So the inventory points would be the brand's warehouses, the brand's distributors. It would be the brand's retail stores, and
got
this
it.
inventory we would then publish on the all digital channels, which will include your the marketplaces. It will include their own web store. Plus, also we give them applications for inside the store, for the same purpose. So all this was connected to the platform, and once an order would come
Got it.
from any of the channels, then the algorithms will figure out where it needs to get fulfilled from. And then
Uh,
as we kept going deeper, as kept scaling up, then there were new use cases coming up that how split orders to be handled, how order hops from one to the next. So all those problems we kept kind of solving. So when we went to the marketplaces initially, the marketplaces were hesitant because they felt, okay, what's the differentiator between, let's say, a Mintra and Amazon, or Flipkart and Amazon? Because they felt that, okay, we'll have both, we'll all have same inventory, because those
yeah.
were the earlier days. Yeah, so that's what
Right.
they all thought about. But then we use the brands, some of the stronger brands, to push from our side, and they were able to push, and we went live with a couple of them. And then when those platforms saw that how this is helping them scale, and it is not putting any pressure on their own logistics and their own infrastructure, and it's a profitable business. There's no dead stock because it's coming from the brand's own inventory. Brands had better control over their assortment, over their catalog. More importantly, that's the presentation on what the customer is going to see eventually. So I think that kind of model worked out, and it kept going strong, and we kept growing till about a year before, or I would say 1.5 years before the pandemic. So 1.5 years
Okay.
before the pandemic, we suddenly we found that the existing clients were not achieving the same growth rates, and largely the problems which we were finding were more operational because the brands did not have capability of last mile logistics, or their fulfillment centers were more from a B2B perspective. So when the orders were 200-300 a day, they were able to more or less manage. But as the SLAs become shorter, you had to hand over the same day, and the orders kept increasing. They were not able to fulfill the order, so that was becoming an impediment. So we thought, okay, if we have to further scale, then we have to offer this operation support also to our clients. So then we started offering fulfillment centers, and more importantly, last mile logistics. to our clients. Essentially, what we did was we were largely like aggregators, where we would aggregate to the platform, and we had a control tower which would manage, on the operation side. But we were able to, get good terms from the last mile providers and better service because we had lots of brands. And individual brands do not have that capability because the volumes are lesser. They were not able to get it. So that's what we started offering to them. But we did not charge, any profit on it. It's more a value-added service because we always looked at the software which was giving us, the main business. Of course, I know later on ShipRocket made a business out of that itself. So, so, so then, and of course, the pandemic hit, right? And that was a very tough time for us because not only our revenue became zero, most of our clients actually refused to pay us because they themselves were not sure that they'll survive. They were firing people by the droves. It was a very, very dark time. And fortunately for us, our investors came to our rescue both financially as well as emotionally, because there you suddenly have, that time we had about, I think, close to 80 odd people to say, okay, now the 80 odd people, how about their households? How about us? Because we had gone through our savings through, the years as well. And we said, okay, this is how do we survive? But fortunately, we went through, thanks to the support. And then once the first lockdown opened up, then the platform at a very different scale, right? And then we had another round of renegotiation with our clients where they came back and saying that, okay, we had not assumed that you will be X part of our business. Now we have to renegotiate commercials. So then we thought about it that, okay, something is wrong with the business model, because when things are not wrong, we, of course, when things are not right, we are not priority. When things are also right, we also not priority. So we can't have a situation again where 100% of a business is dependent on third parties. So we cannot have a situation again. So then since we came from the retail background, so we had this confidence to say, can we take over the business of some of our clients, right? And because the problem we knew were more or less common, right? And it will largely depend on adoption and the DNA, right? So we said, okay, that problems, hopefully we'll not have, and we can, scale these brands with very strong, powerful brands. And why can't we, take them over? So we made a list of brands which we thought we could speak to. We went to the board and said to the board that, knowing fully well, that the board has invested in a SaaS company, and now it's kind of talking about a different model as well. So we were very open with the board, saying that the SaaS business will continue, because by then the SaaS business had hit about $10 million ARR.
Just before you add more, can you explain what all the SaaS business was doing in terms
So
of?
largely same omni-channel commerce, right?
Okay,
So inventory lying anywhere can be published anywhere. Once you get an
understand.
order from anywhere, can be fulfilled from anywhere. And there were various use cases, built around it. So almost
Understand.
all large brands were using us. And post the pandemic, then you also had guys which were focused on, let's say, the SMEs, etc., like the likes of Unicommerce, and a lot of other guys came in. What they were trying to do the same kind of a model as well. So there was a pricing pressure at that point of time as well on us, and we were $10 million ARR, and I was not seeing that, how, with this pricing pressure, can we quickly scale up to another 20 million, right? Profitably, right? So we knew the scale up would happen because it's bound to grow. But because of pricing pressure, I was not very sure how it's going to be. And at the same time, we saw that opportunity to acquire some of these brands, because during the pandemic, what happened was, because if you look at India, most of the large brands are all international brands, and their home countries were in trouble because of the pandemic. Their home businesses were in trouble. So we thought this is the best opportunity for us to approach them. So when we went to the board, we told the board that, this is a SaaS business. We are creating one more vertical, which we call captive, because that was the idea, that this will be the captive brand. So they're not third party brand, but they are brands. So they'll be captive. So we'll have two verticals in the company, of course, using the same platform, right? So there were very clear synergies, and we very carefully picked the clients, because we couldn't talk to the India CEO, because in a way you were asking for his job. We had to go to the global teams, and because of the last stints at Reliance and Arvind, where I was also involved in international business development. So we had made those connects in the past. So we said, okay, we will find the connects to go to the leadership of those brands, and we'll have to get going. So the moment things opened up, we started traveling to meet up these guys. Then of course, we had Lee and Wrangler, which converted first, and then we had Toys R Us. The Toys R Us discussion has started a bit earlier than Lee Wrangler, but the difference was that Toys R Us had another India partner. So they had to give a termination notice. There was because the partner was already in breach because of the pandemic, and then there was a cure period and all of that. So all that happened. That took time. In case of Lee and Wrangler, they had their own subsidiary. So for them, it was very easy, for the regional office, which was in Hong Kong, to inform the team that, okay, this is the way we got to go, and we have to pass on the business now, to AceTurtle. So that's where we kind of started off,
Got it.
and
And you started like running the India practices of most of these brands. Any reason why you think the last few years has seen an uptick for international brands coming into India?
I think authenticity, right? Somewhere, whether it is out there openly or there is back of the mind of the consumer. And I think also what has happened is thanks to the digital penetration, right? The internet penetration. I think everyone's consuming the same content more or less, right?
Hmm.
So I think it's a factor of authenticity. So if you look at it even today, or even if you just say 3 years back, um, Indian brands doing Western clothing, for the last 3 4 years, even before the pandemic had started, they were already on a decline. They were not growing.
Right.
So that's where the smart guys came up with things like Maneuver, etc. Ethnic, because that's where you have you're authentic, right? And those businesses did very very well, right? And there are quite a few of them. But the Indian brands doing Western clothing, they were under a bit of a trouble. So anyway, so we started this captive brands, where the idea was that over a period of time, at least half of the business should come from captive brands, and that's what we thought about. But in the first 6 months, it was very evident, the level of scale, because we hit
Right.
40 million very, very quickly, right? So I said, okay, this and profitably, right?
Right.
So we knew this is the right model to do, and we said, okay, then we went back to the board and say, that because now we have new problems to solve, which was true, because commerce is only one side of the problem, and then you have design, then you have there were two black boxes, big black boxes for us, so the retail stores, which was a black box, and then you had the factories, which were the black box, the manufacturing was happening, and then we had to connect this and we had to connect design, and we could see very clearly coming, fortunately from a SaaS company, that how technology could solve all of these problems of retail, right? Because retail is a one of the oldest industries, right, in the world, and but it has not evolved, right? And the same old way it operates, it's very very primitive. So we said, okay, definitely is a play to do, which means we need to have the tech bandwidth focus, on building some of these new products, which we need to solve these new problems which we are encountering, and for us, because the board could see the result, they were very supportive. And last year September, is we started giving termination notice to our clients. Something could never envisaged. What we could do, to get one client, and
Hmm.
And
here,
then,
we
and
were, yeah, and we were letting go of all of that. So that's how we pivoted here, and so largely, of course, the omnichannel commerce platform is the same, but
Right.
there are new products which we built around those pieces as well, and we continue to build to solve some of these new problems which we are facing, and it's been a great journey, undoubtedly.
it certainly sounds like it. It's fascinating that pivot. It's like you kind of learn from all these brands and then took those learnings.
Actually, you're right. Yeah, you're absolutely right, because that's really helped us a lot. And we understood, that where the friction is, right? When you have partners in the value chain, even though you might able to influence your teams, but the partner is difficult to influence. Even if we have data, and we were showing data to our clients as well, but they were never able to act upon it. For example, even if you have that, this is the customer in this catchment is looking for this because that's what he's searching for, or that's what or he or she is searching for, or that what he or she is buying, and this is what the recency of rate of sale is telling you. And even if you make similar products or same product, you will not be able to go to the market because the middle guy might not be a believer in it and will not buy. So what we did, the first thing was we said, okay, let's remove all the friction. So we removed all wholesale. That's the first thing we did. We shut down the entire wholesale channel, which was two-thirds of the business for them that point of time, right? But I'm glad it all kind of worked out, and the model is scaled well and continues to scale well.
And we've kind of seen an uptick in that in general in the consumer brand space. I think in India, you see a lot more direct to consumer kind of models. At a high level, what do you think some of the strengths are of some of these Indian brands,
Yeah.
and how do
Although
you
you
see?
mentioned that they were having a tough time, but not the Indian brands catering to
I
Western
think,
tastes.
yeah, very specific problems to be solved. For example, on the clothing side, I think the way we dress today for occasion wear, and the way the fusion is happening. especially on the women's side, Indian Western clothing. I think that's a very, very interesting problem which some of the folks are already trying to solve. Then, which are very unique to India. Then the other things like beauty, because of people think of India as one large country of 1.4 billion people, but they
Yeah.
forget that we are about 50 countries in one, right?
Yes.
So,
Correct.
so I think the diversity of it, right, and I think that's where some of the beauty folks are also digging in. So I think which is very India specific problem. For example, we were also very clear when we started off that we would not take over brands which where we had to import the merchandise, and there
Right.
was a couple of reasons. One was that uh, all this data is of no use to you if you're not able to create and put back the product what the consumer wants, right? So we needed the rights to manufacture locally and design locally, and also again to serve this market which is very, very diverse. You need to have different fits and all of that. So that's a very, very India specific problem. So the thought process was clear that we'll have international brands, but we'll cater to the so you get credibility with international brand, you get authenticity, and your local production, local design delivers what the market wants. And of course the whole model of getting data back. So today we don't work with any channel where we cannot have the data back. So that's how, whether the channel is online, offline, because our model is not different when we start off from the SaaS side, because it's all about connecting brands to consumers, right? And channels don't matter. Channels, it should be channel agnostic, because some channels will become more relevant, some channels become less relevant over a period of time, and the relevance might in the short term might also keep changing. Some new channels might emerge. So that's how the whole model has been built.
Understand. And you earlier mentioned that you didn't have a tech background. Now you scaled a company that's purely providing tech for retail. How has that experience been? Any challenges, and what's next for AceTurtle now?
I think when we started off, there were quite a few people trying to solve, at least towards the later part, something similar what we were doing. And I think the difference between us and them was that we came from the retail domain, so we understood the problems on ground. And so I think that definitely helps. So you can't take away the power of domain. That is one understanding which we clearly had. And on the tech side, it's you get the right teams, focus on the velocity,
Right.
right? And you'll get there. So you need to have this you smart folks who love building products, empower them, give them whatever the best they require, and so we work in small teams. No team is more than 8 people. That's how our
Right.
software development is done since the SaaS time, even now, and that's what gives us. We track velocity, because velocity is gives you it gives you symptoms as well. If a
Right.
particular a track is a combination of engineering and product teams, small teams, and if a track is not getting incremental velocity, then there is definitely some issue, right, which needs to be solved and resolved. So I think we figured that piece out, and I'm happy that we are creating products which the best of the brands have used, and today also globally best of the brands are using. So we are going to make one more announcement. That's only, I think, only two SaaS clients we retained. One was Landmark Group, because they were the only guys who paid us during the pandemic. So
Right.
and so we're saying, okay, this is not fair to them.
Hmm.
And second is, announcement we're going to make next week, because that we felt was strategic to us.
Understand. What's your scale today, and if you can share which brands are you working with?
So Lee and Wrangler is what went live first, because what in our model is when we take over the brand, we set up the entire supply chain. So it's design, manufacturing to consumer, right? We data pipelines are all set now, right? So it's all about the supply chain, setting up supply chain. That's what takes time. So we did with Lee Wrangler. So last financial year we crossed 50 million US dollars run rate, and we were EBITDA positive. I'm not talking about adjusted EBITDA or any other EBITDA. Old world
Community
EBITDA
adjusted
positive.
EBITDA.
Yeah, yeah, adjusted EBITDA. We're talking about old world EBITDA. So we are old world EBITDA positive, and this year hopefully we should double that as well.
Amazing. And so Lee is your first
So
captive client,
Lee Wrangler, they went live first.
right?
Toys R Us recently went live.
Okay.
Toys R Us, and next is Babies R Us, and
Okay.
which is now we already announced it, so it's public knowledge. In December, we're launching Dockers as well, so that's the next one coming on, and
Amazing.
we're gonna make a couple of more announcements as well. So how the whole model is being done: supply chain is common, design is specific to the brands, and the rest of the pipeline is all common, because these are all largely data pipelines. Because we in the company we don't have a sales team. There is nobody selling
Hmm.
to anybody, right? So that's how the whole model is. So,
Understand. Um, what would be your top three insights from your journey as a founder about this industry, if you had to pick three?
I think perseverance. I think that
Hmm.
is, I would say, the most important quality, right?
Right,
Whether, and that's not industry specific because I think that's across the business. I think perseverance is the most important, as I would say.
right.
And second is, why you need to be too close, very close. You will be very close to what you're trying to do. But try and meet adjacent businesses, people who are in the adjacent businesses, because that'll open up your
Hmm.
horizons. I think that's very, very important because whatever we do today, the impact you will see 1.5 years, 2 years down the line, right? The true impact, which also means that, you need to have enough data points for you to figure out that, okay, this is where it's going to lead. So this, I think, is very, very important. And the third link to this is networking. I spend every Saturday, only meeting people, right?
Mazin, are you
That's
there?
what I do because Monday to Friday, I'm involved completely in the work. So I just want to stay focused what I'm doing. And Saturday is only the time when I meet. So I meet all sorts of people. Somebody reaches out, I meet them. Some people I want to meet. So my entire Saturday goes only for this. Since morning till I have dinner as also with somebody always. So my lunch is always with somebody, and then I make sure that I'm meeting at least 4 to 5 people every Saturday because that there is so much you can learn from others, and even from budding entrepreneurs, who reach out sometimes. A lot of the corporate guys, who look at our journey and have jumped or want to jump. So everyone, gives you something, one thing or the other, which you can apply today, or you might apply later, or you might have the back of your mind as a data point, to see, okay, what my business could also be, in a couple of years' time. So I think that is the three most important things I would say,
Understand.
and I would say they're industry agnostic. They've got nothing to do with any specific industry.
Oh, awesome. And just to close our final question, what's one piece of unfiltered feedback you'd received as an entrepreneur that really changed your perspective and you imbibed as well?
One I think is sometimes I do have and unconsciously I get into micromanagement, so that is
Okay,
something which I have to kind of improve upon. I think
understand.
that's one thing which I'm still working on, to be honest.
Understand. Thank you so much, Nitin, for your time. Really enjoyed the chat. I think we learned a lot, especially about your incredible pivot at that scale. I think it's rare.
Well, thank you so much, Viral and Martin. It was lovely speaking with you folks, and thanks for having me here.